Snipers are not like other warriors. If need be, they have to watch their target laughing with his children 1 second and then shoot him the next and make sure they do not hit the kids. Oh, and they might have to do it from a mile away. Today we are looking at 15 snipers with thousands of kills between them to find out. Were they born with rifles in their hands, or is there some other X factor? The deadliest sniper of all time, and 4 guys that can compete with him in skill, suggests that the magic is in the background. The naturals. Simo, the White Death, Häyhä, killed over 500 people in just 98 days. Francis Pegahmagabow was the deadliest warrior of World War I with 378 confirmed kills. And you have heard of Carlos Hathcock and Chris Kyle, but here's a legend you might not know. Chuck Mawhinney actually had more kills than Hathcock in Vietnam, over 100. In one instance, he eliminated 16 enemy combatants during a river crossing operation in just 30 seconds with headshots at night. But if you take away the different wars and their names, you might think they were all the same person. All of them were from country backgrounds. All learned how to shoot and stalk at early ages. Häyhä learned to conceal himself so well that he could hit small birds that got spooked just by the sun's glint of a rifle lance. Mawhinney picked off rabbits and small deer from an aircraft, and Chris Kyle had something else. Like the other 4, he was hunting and tracking game in the Texas brush at the age of 8. But unlike them, he became a professional bull rider before he joined the US Navy. And do you know what that did? It gave him the physical conditioning he would need to aim his rifle accurately in 115-degree heat with his adrenaline pumping. In conclusion, all 5 of these guys were snipers long before they joined up. Simo only got his formal sniper training late. Francis Pegahmagabow got none. So, sniper schools are not our X factor. And if these 5 are not enough, just ask one of the more unusual legends of sniping. But make sure to subscribe before you do, it helps a lot. The semi-pro. This is Lyudmila, Lady Death Pavlichenko, who scored 309 kills in World War II. Like the others so far, she had a background in shooting. She was a competitive shooter in civilian life and earned a certified sharpshooter badge for it. But here's where things start to change. She did not grow up with a rifle in her hands. Shooting was her hobby, the thing she did in her spare time. Her full-time life was not as a hunter or tracker, but as a historian.
What?
She got a master's degree from Cave University. What? A history researcher becoming one of the deadliest snipers of all time? If you are feeling brave, drop a comment and let me know how you think this could translate before I give you the answer. It's not so unbelievable because this was long before anyone knew what Google was. That meant hours in silent libraries for weeks on end, cross-referencing the smallest of details. It was fatiguing, boring work, and so is most of being a sniper. Discipline in uncomfortable situations makes the difference between the legends and the dead. And that is what those days in the library prepared her for. She refused to shoot unless she was certain she would hit an enemy. That was why 36 of her confirmed kills were enemy snipers. She simply knew how to bait them into bad positions, bet she would never take. That is something to keep in mind when we look at a modern sniper with an even more unusual background. But admittedly, most snipers come from near the shooting world, which does not necessarily mean guns. Just as the guy you saw in the movie, but whose name you likely don't know.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
The engineers. In Black Hawk Down, two snipers from a hovering helicopter volunteered to go into danger to reinforce their comrades against overwhelming numbers. Gary Gordon was one of them. This man was both alike and unlike the others we have seen up to now. He was a woodsman, but hunting was not as much a part of his life before he joined the army, as we saw with the guys at the start of the video. In this way, Gordon was like another American sniper you have not heard of, the old Jack of Tennessee. Jack Hinson did not want to fight in the Civil War. Like a lot of people in his state, he wanted to stay neutral until the war came for him. Union soldiers decapitated two of his sons and put their heads on the gateposts of his home, so he vowed to take revenge. At the age of 57, he was going to become a sniper. It was like the plot of an action movie come to life. By the time the credits rolled, over 100 enemy troops were dead.
You're dead meat, Pilgrim.
But unlike Gordon, Jack Hinson did not have a military background. Neither did the Soviet Union's Nikolai Ilyin. Never heard of him either? He had 494 confirmed kills. And just wait till you hear what he did at the Battle of Stalingrad. Hinson was a wealthy plantation owner. Ilyin was a locksmith before World War II. Three men, three very different backgrounds. One thing in common, these guys loved creating Frankenstein rifles. Hinson did not do it himself, but had the money to commission a specialized heavy rifle that was excellent for precision shooting from a fixed position. As a locksmith, Ilyin had to know mechanics, gears, pins, springs. And it turns out that building logs translated to building rifles. He knew how to modify his weapon for his environment, namely the Russian winter. Because what do you do when you're cold? You shiver. And shivering even slightly can mean pulling the trigger inaccurately. So Ilyin modified his Mosin Nagant to make sure his shivers did not lead to inaccurate shots. Then he would just wait like he was on a shift, sitting on rubble piles for 16 hours and picking off targets of opportunity. And there sure were a lot of them at Stalingrad. 95 kills, 11 days, 0 shivers. All through his life, Gary Gordon would take things apart and see how they worked. His gear once he joined the army was no different. He modified his rifle to make sure it was the perfect blend for the mission at hand. In this case, that did not mean shooting through the Russian winter, but from moving helicopters. And that is one of the hardest things to do as a shooter. The target is moving, you are moving. And there's something else. The helicopter vibrating underneath you, even if it's hovering over one spot, that's constant interference to your aim. But Gordon did it. Unfortunately, his sniping skills were not enough to turn the situation around during the Black Hawk Down incident. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his bravery by leaving his helicopter armed with his sniper rifle and a pistol to protect a wounded pilot. He left a legacy that all American snipers call on today. And Hinson, it turned out his rifle was custom-made for his environment too. A plantation owner needs to know the lay of the land. He knew every crevice near the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. So he would pick the best spots and wait, because revenge is a dish best served cold. He was so good that he could hit Union officers on the decks of passing gunboats at over 500 yards, an extreme distance for his time. His preferred targets were officers. By the end of the war, he carved 36 notches into his rifle to mark the officers he killed. So maybe you do not need to grow up with a rifle, but it really helps to know the mechanics of one if you want to turn into a successful sniper. And yet, we are still missing something. Some people became legendary snipers without either a shooting or mechanical background. Also, one guy came closer in a modern way. The kind of weird ones. Wally is the only name we know him by, because he's a Canadian who volunteered to go fight in Ukraine. Before that, he was an IT guy, a techie. How do you go out of the office and onto the battlefield? Well, it turns out that all his computer programming gave him insight into solving logic problems. It allowed him to approach all the things a sniper has to do as a technical problem that his brain was already wired to answer. Of course, his familiarity with modern technology gave him a more concrete edge. It allowed him to master ballistic calculators and long-range optical equipment faster than most soldiers. He even managed to integrate drones into his approach by using them to spot enemies and solve the problem of how to reach them at a distance. Feel free to check out my video on lessons from Ukraine about snipers and drones. So yeah, you can be a tech geek and turn into a sniper. They're closer than you think. And if that did not make you think twice about what makes a sniper, this artist definitely will. Ivan Sidorenko. The White Death might be the deadliest. Ivan Sidorenko is close. He also had over 500 confirmed kills in World War II. But he was not a hunter like Simo Häyhä. He was an artist. At Penza Art College before the war. So, how could an artist become such a deadly sniper? Maybe his superiors in the Red Army asked that same thing. He was assigned to a mortar unit at first. But what do artists know? Perspective, lighting, and how things fit into space. So Sidorenko was not looking for the things most people look for. The negative space was what stood out for Sidorenko. Subtle asymmetries, irregularities in colors, like the way a camouflage net did not quite match the local landscape. Being in a mortar unit bored him when he started to see those things everywhere.
This is boring. I'm bored now.
So, he soon freelanced with a sniper rifle. That was when he started to learn how ballistics worked and added to his ability to find things in space. Eventually, his superiors saw that being in a mortar unit was a waste of his talents, and he became a full-time sniper. Result? Not only 500 kills, but 250 other snipers trained. Sidorenko went from an art student to being one of the founders of modern sniper doctrine, the really weird ones. Some carriers have crossover skills with the special, technical, and mechanical demands that come with being a sniper, even if it does not look that way. But how could one of Ukraine's most lethal modern snipers have been a lawyer before the war? Seriously. Well, guess what? I was a lawyer in my early years, until I saw the light, switched sides, and started building companies. I am also a dedicated long-distance shooter, and there is more overlap than you think. The legal profession is a stressful one, and that's where Hola, the witch Bihar, first got her ability to handle that stress. But there's another thing lawyers are good at. They know how to manage complex data and put it into an actionable sequence. Snipers have to do that too. Ukraine's witch approaches her targets in the same way. She gathers evidence through observation, uses tools to calculate the variables like the wind, and then executes. That is why she got her name as the witch, because she has a knack for gathering data and calculating exactly where her targets are hiding. Her Russian enemies have chalked this up to witchcraft. In reality, it's just a lawyer's brain being used for other purposes. Okay, so a lawyer has some crossover skills with a sniper, but a journalist? Really? Before the witch came down from the law firm on her broomstick, like my mother-in-law when she comes to visit, there was Olena Bilozerska, fighting as a sniper even during the Donbass war before the full-scale invasion. But she was not in the army. She was a journalist. And do you know what journalists do when they are actually doing their jobs right? They pour over data for small details. They sit for hours waiting to get that perfect scoop. Bilozerska did that, documenting unrest and corruption in her country before 2014, a precursor to Nick Shirley, the Nick Shirley of her time. It even got her targeted by the regime at that time, so that taught her how to handle stress. All of this came before she ever touched a gun, which she bought with her own money. And the military did not teach her how to shoot. Her marksman of her husband did. But there was one final ingredient that made her one of the Kremlin's most wanted. Her investigatory experience led her to realize something. Thermal optics were not optional in today's world. That's how she became a terror of the night, picking off 3 Russian-backed separatists in one night, on video, back in 2017. But Bilozerska's journalist background gave her one more thing that snipers cannot do without. A sniper's reputation matters almost as much as the ability to shoot. Bilozerska knew how to publish her exploit and strike fear into Russian troops. That is why the Kremlin announced her death more than once, but so far it has just been wishful thinking. The X Factor. So there you have it, 15 legends. And what do they all have in common? Go back and replace some parts and you'll find not one, but 2 X Factors. One, they acquired the ability to accurately measure small targets at long distances, and you or their rifle would be able to penetrate that space through interference. If not, they would not shoot. 2, enormous patience. Whether it was Chris Kyle in desert heat, Nikolai Ilyin in Siberian cold, or Gary Gordon on a constantly vibrating helicopter, they had the patience to deal with the discomfort and not let it mess up their ability to measure that space. Ultimately, these are the things a sniper school is a crash course on. Useful, but not necessarily required, if you have the right background. If not, you better go to one to get those skills. If you want to see some of those skills in action, watch this video about sniper rifles next, or watch this one on how Hollywood gets it all wrong.